In 1981, the U.S. Navy was bombing at the island of Kahoolave. And that started after the end of World War II. And they had been using our island as a bombing target, and not just for themselves, but they would invite the navies of New Zealand and Australia and Japan to also join them in bombing our sacred land. There are a group of young men who resisted. They went over to Kahoolave. And because they were on the island or making their way there, the Navy had to stop. In the 1980s, you can only fight for so long without becoming weary. And that's what we're seeing, people having this weariness around COVID. There is a time when something has to shift in order for the next step to happen. And I belong to that next part of the story of Kahoolave. One of the first things that were negotiated was the building of the first halau. And a halau is a traditional structure made out of traditional materials. And it's a place, a sacred place, where people could gather together, could pray, could talk kuka, that deep spiritual conversation that people need to have a place for. So the Ohana thought, if we could build a place like that, made up of our materials on this wounded island, we would have some place always to be at home in. And it would serve as a reminder to the U.S. Navy that we have returned. While we were building this, some of the Navy personnel, the enlisted guys, would come over to us. And they would ask if we could help. And in typical Hawaiian Native way, we didn't say yes, say no. We said nothing. And that silence is huge. And so they understood it. I don't know how they understood it, but they understood that they were not given permission. But what we also understood was that they were seeing us doing something that must have been of importance even to them. And so we went home from that access. And then when we came back the next month, alongside of the halau that we were building was a pile of stone, a pohaku. And it was a pohaku that we were using to lay the foundation of our halau. And the stone were just laying there. And the Navy people didn't come up to take credit for doing it. They didn't want praise for doing it. They said nothing. They just left the stone there, and the stone spoke for them. And so, without words, we asked them to come and hapai to carry stone and help us lay the stone. That moment of coming to the center was so important, and it was without words. It was just seeing the behavior and the respect that each of us had for the other. And it was very interesting that this was not negotiated. It was just something that human beings do when they actually understand what respect is. So this is Kahoolave, that wonderful little island. And that was me, this picture of the girl with the long hair. That was me in 1981. And it was a time when I was, I guess, thought of as being an activist. But you know what I really was? I was someone who could hear. That was my job, is to listen. And so we built that halau, and they helped carry stone. And I cannot tell you that the thing that happened there was what allowed other things to be negotiated. But I think the coming to the center that we experienced there, that story went up the chain of command. And we were able not to just negotiate with the captain who was in charge of Kaho'olawe, but we were able to negotiate with the admiral. And when we were able to negotiate at that level, we're able to negotiate bringing children onto the island. And we're able to negotiate going up to the heiau, the sacred place where our ancestors would navigate their way back to Kahiki, to our homeland. And it was from this space we were able to sleep on the top of the mountain here, where our ancestors would come to navigate and plot their pathway back to our homeland. And so our capacity to do more to protect the island came without words. It's something that your friend Joe Weston taught me, that I have to say the two words coming together: fierce civility. That concept of being totally committed to your way of seeing the importance of what you do. The Navy didn't change their idea of Kaho'olawe as a bombing target. And we Hawaiians did not change our way of thinking about this as sacred land. But what happened was coming to the center and being able to do something collectively that was just based on goodwill and heart. And that allowed, I think, the movement of Kaho'olawe to move to deeper places without resorting to going to court. And so it wasn't a process of winning or losing. It was a process of experiencing deep respect. And through that process, those Navy people respected our Aina, respected who we were.